Does this argument assume what it's trying to prove? Welcome to Critical Thinking Scan, where we look at how you can think about any faith-challenging message and arrive at a biblical, logical conclusion yourself. I'm Patricia Engler, and today let's look at a type of potentially flawed argument called circular reasoning or begging the question. Circular reasoning happens when an argument assumes what it's trying to prove. In other words, the argument's premise is the same as its conclusion, even if they're stated in different words. For instance, the argument, "Critical thinking is important for Christians because logically evaluating messages is a crucial skill for every believer," is basically just the same as saying Christians need critical thinking because Christians need critical thinking. The argument assumes what it's trying to prove and therefore begging the question. As another example, like I've mentioned in an earlier video, methods used to date fossils or sediments as millions of years old often arbitrarily assume that Earth is millions of years old in the first place, which is circular. And it's that kind of arbitrariness which makes circular arguments a problem. See, what may be surprising is that while circular reasoning is often considered an informal fallacy, not all circular reasoning is illogical. Remember, an argument is logically valid when the conclusion must be true if the premises are true. And in a circular argument, the conclusion is the premise. So an argument like Christians need critical thinking because Christians need critical thinking is formally logical. It's just not useful as a persuasive argument because there are no other premises to support why the conclusion is true. We just have to believe it arbitrarily. So the real test of whether a circular argument is an informal fallacy is whether it's arbitrary. If you can show there are other good reasons to believe the conclusion, those extra premises remove the arbitrariness and keep the argument from being circular. For example, you could say Christians need critical thinking because those skills help us defend our beliefs, strengthen our faith, and avoid being deceived. Adding those reasons keeps the argument from being circular. Now, with that in mind, let's take a step back and think about circular reasoning on a bigger picture level. We've already seen that circular reasoning is an informal fallacy because it makes for bad arguments, but not a formal fallacy because it's technically logical. And when you think about it, some circular reasoning is not only logical, it's necessary for establishing starting points for our thinking. These starting points are called axioms, or presuppositions, and they are statements which we can't necessarily prove are true, but which we assume are true so that we can reason about other things. For instance, the laws of logic are axioms, and so is the statement that logic itself exists. Like apologist Dr. Jason Lisle points out, we have to assume that the laws of logic exist in order to use the laws of logic to argue that the laws of logic exist. That's technically circular reasoning, and yet it's not a fallacy, because the axiom at the heart of this argument, that logic exists, is not something we believe arbitrarily. In fact, the world only really makes sense if that axiom is true. And like other apologists have explained, the test of whether an axiom is worth believing is whether it's coherent with itself and consistent with the observable world. In other words, valid axioms lead to statements which don't contradict themselves and which are affirmed by the external facts we see in the world around us. And the axiom that logic exists passes both tests. The laws of logic don't contradict each other, and the physical order we see in the material universe and the fact that math and science are possible also affirm that logic exists, and the laws of logic provide a coherent basis for our thinking. So, axioms which pass the internal and external consistency tests are not arbitrary, and therefore basing our reasoning and our thinking on them is not a fallacy, even if it contains circular reasoning. And that's important because all worldviews start with axioms. Knowing how to test these axioms will help us understand which worldview is worth believing and which ones lead to fallacies. But more on that next time. For more on how to think critically about any faith-challenging message, you can access my other CT scan videos packed with tactics, tips, and tools that helped me as a Christian student at secular university. Thank you for watching. Hey, it's Patricia. just wanting to let you know that if you like these videos, are on board to share the message of biblical authority, and want to give, you're welcome to help Answers in Genesis produce more content like this and equip more people to defend their faith by making a one-time donation or becoming a monthly supporter by clicking the link below. Thanks so much.